Off Limits is the money podcast that blows up stereotypes, showing you that managing money doesn't have to be hard.
We want you to thrive, not only with your money, but in every part of your life.
What you will get out of this podcast is real, relatable, and relevant tips and strategies that you can apply today. Hi, I'm Donald Raymond, and this is
Christine Spiak. We are money coaches, business owners, and colleagues who are passionate about helping you become more of who you are. So if you're ready, join us.
Well, hey, Christine, here we are again. It's episode 6 of season 2. And what are we talking about today?
Well, our episode title may sound a little confusing. Saving is success. And we're going to break that down in a minute. But before I do that, or before we do that, I'm going to share some statistics with you. What do you feel when you hear 1 in 4 American workers do not set money aside for savings? Is that something you identify with? Does that get you in the gut? What about
scares me a little bit. I don't want to be one of them.
Yeah, amen. What about this? 57% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency. There's a big percentage of Americans who financially can't cover an emergency.
And that is staggering. I think even more staggering, you and I looked these studies up right before recording this episode. We're recording now. This is June of 2023 that we're recording, and we're scheduling this episode to air sometime in December 2023. So the bank rate survey, 57% of Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency. That was statistical data that was analyzed for the year 2023, right? The other one, the Career Builder survey, 1 in 4 Americans do not have money being set aside for savings. And I think their threshold, generally speaking, was like $100. So obviously they can't pay for a $1,000 emergency either. That was in 2017. So from 2017 to 2023, we're effectively saying that we've made no progress as a nation because the percentage, we're just stuck. This is limbo. So in 2017, the percentage that they came up with, obviously the demographics are different. The population census for 2017 to 2023 is going to be different. Those numbers are going to be different. But the percentage they came up with in 2017 was 56%. And the percentage calculated in 2023 for 2023 is 57%. And so you could argue that it's getting worse, but statistically, they're effectively the same number. So here we are now, what is it, 6-7 years later? And that number hasn't moved. That's a little scary. So knowing this and knowing the title of the show, maybe this will help make the title make a little more sense. Saying saving is success is our definition of success. When we think about what does it look like to be financially successful, it means that in today's show, we're going to talk about all the different ways and types of saving activity that you can have. And when you're participating and acting proactively, managing a budget and putting money into these different savings vehicles and accounts regularly as part of your program, your financial program for your household, that is what we are calling success. We're calling that success. The fact that you've got a plan that allows you to save so that you can handle a $1,000 emergency. What if it's a $10,000 emergency? We don't want you to be in a position where that creates anxiety. So today we're just going to be talking about saving. We're going to focus in. We've done episodes with much broader topics, but this one is probably going to be a shorter episode because we're just going to look at saving, which arguably is going to be the smallest activity you do. But if it's done right, this can be one of those 80-20 rules where 20% effort gets you 80% result.
The impact is really, when we talk about that ripple effect,
Yes.
The ripple effect of saving, wow. It's that financial security I know for myself that I was looking for, having that fully funded 6-month emergency fund, having retirement accounts that are maxed out through our employer, having accounts set aside for home repairs, vehicle repairs, a place where I can go where we need money for something, having the money there and available to us now, today, and in our future when we hit retirement. That is success to me. Mm-hmm. I don't have to be the richest person on the planet to say I'm successful with my money. I don't even have to be half as rich, right? I can be right where I am today, but be successful with my money because I have set it up for success. It is successful.
That's right. And, you've heard us say fail forward, you're going to mess it up, and we've kind of made we've sort of, I think, unintentionally communicated that you're not succeeding, or the definition of success is somewhat blurry, right? And we certainly didn't intend to do that, but we kind of did a last minute change and presented this definition for this show specifically. And I think it's appropriate because really at the end of the day, we are saving to someday retire. And along the way, we're going to have lots of little milestone savings accounts and funds that we're going to talk about here in a minute. And those are going to help us get there. But there's long-term goals out there that, one day you're going to be living off your savings, right? And I know several people that are retiring, last year, this year, next year, and they're all behaving kind of the same way. They're all reacting the same way to this idea of, I'm not going to earn an income anymore. I'm switching from earning an income that pays my bills to now consuming all of my savings that I've worked so hard for the rest of my life. I'm just going to slowly consume that money. And it's a hard thing because they haven't really been thinking about it, obviously, throughout their lives, and they haven't prepared themselves probably appropriately to make this change and conversion mentally and emotionally into now interacting differently with their money. Now they're not going to be putting it away. They're going to be taking it out. And that's a scary notion. But what if you didn't put it away to begin with, right? So what if you never took this step? What if you didn't get this savings portion right and didn't take the intentional steps to put the money early and often into those savings programs, into those accounts where it could grow and accumulate over time? And that's really what we're talking about. And that's why we think that saving really is the definition of success.
Exactly right. So saving for emergencies, saving for retirement, maybe it's saving for college, maybe it's saving for a down payment on a house. You're a dynamic person. The way you spend your money is spent through many different categories. We want you to save for those categories as well with some of the topics I just shared.
Yeah. So when we talk about saving, right, we're not just talking about retirement. We're not just talking about saving for a new car or repairs on the house, the emergency fund. It's all of those things, right? It's everything that you're going to, anything that you're not going to, is not a regular monthly expense, right? Any purchase that you're going to make that's not part of your regular monthly expenses, that becomes a savings goal. And it may not be a big one, right? We're not talking about retirement now. We're not talking about buying a house. Maybe we're talking about replacing, you shared that you'd be replacing a car someday or making a vehicle purchase. And you've got a fund established that you're saving toward that future purchase. That's a fairly large goal. But what if it's something small? What if you just want, a new TV? And so you start saving for that new TV. This is a savings goal. You need to put money intentionally into a savings account little by little until you can afford to make that purchase. And you'll build those little funds within your budget program so that you can afford to make those purchases over time. And if it's long enough, you may even be talking about investing that money, right?
Yes, absolutely. So you hit the nail on the head. We have to start with creating goals. And we've talked about creating goals in the past. We often talk about it in every episode because it's just that important. It's that crucial to your overall financial health. So you set your goals for your household. Donald mentioned one that we are saving for currently, and that's to buy a vehicle next spring, summer 2024. We are actively saving for it so we can do so by cash flowing it. Once you've identified your goals, what you want to save for, now it's the fun part. What are some tips, strategies that you can do to maximize those savings?
Yeah, so some of those are going to be obvious, right? If we have enough time, we can invest the money. And if we can invest the money, that money can grow. It can be handled by hopefully professionals. And if you work with a coach, Christine or I, or anybody else, you're going to be encouraged strongly to find a financial planner that you can work with. And they're going to help you build a financial plan where your money can grow long term. Other ways to do it, though, is just automate some of these deductions from your regular income so that money flows into a fund or an account where it can be separate from your regular expenses throughout the month. You can make those plans. You can set up that automation through your bank or through other applications so that money just immediately gets parked where it needs to be saved so that when the time comes and when you hit those goals, that money is available. Or if it's an emergency fund or some sort of a maintenance fund for home or car or other, this miscellaneous fund that we've talked about quite a bit, then it could go into those areas as well, so that it can help protect you from some of those unknowns. One thing that we talk about a lot is something that happens every year, which is Christmas, right? And so you're going to be buying presents, you're going to be traveling. Well, this happens every single year, but it's not part of your regular monthly spending. And so it's a good idea, if you can, as you can, to start moving a little bit of money every month over into an account that's going to help cover those costs, so that you don't find yourself reaching for the credit card in the holiday season.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're talking holidays, it's not even the gifts or the travel. It's the cards you're mailing, the stamps you're buying. It's the hosting.
Absolutely.
It's the outfits. It's the Christmas jammies everybody seems to buy now for their family. Everyone, Christmas morning is waking up in the matching.
That's a thing, isn't it? When did that become a thing?
It is a thing. It wasn't a thing when we were kids and growing up, but no. I mean, I've even gone so far as my daughter's an only child. We have, and I admit this proudly, have bought her and my dog matching pajamas.
Oh no. Yes. Okay. Hang on. I gotta, we can't do this episode. I'm signing off right now.
You're over it?
That's where I draw the line. My dog has never worn clothes.
It's super cute. Our
I'll
dog
give it to you. I'll let it slide.
Yeah. Our dog has only done it like on Halloween and 1 year for Christmas. I think it was only 1 year, but
we were a dog family before we were a human family. We had 3 dogs and we called them our kids, and they definitely all got spoiled. So I'm not sure I have much room to talk here.
Yeah, you definitely don't. Anybody who's a pet owner, they can hear, they get it. So, but thinking of it through, it's not just the gifts, right? It's not just the travel. It's all of these other things that go into that savings goal. So right now we're talking about holiday spending, or maybe it's that down payment on the home. All right, well, I have to pay for an inspection. I have to pay an attorney for, at least in New York State, you have to have an attorney to go to closing. There's also the down payment. There are other costs that go into buying your home for the first time. So there's lots of costs associated with any savings goals that you may have. Try to think of them holistically before you set that dollar amount target for what you're going to save for. So Donald did mention some automation. Another automation that you can do is the direct deposit from your employer. You can break that up into percentage, into dollar amount, into different bank accounts. Your entire paycheck does not just have to be direct deposited into one account. Break it up. Put that rule, if you will, into effect. So a portion is coming right out and going right into a savings account that you are going to use for some purpose down the road. And we have now a very hot topic in our society today, our HYS. You know what I'm talking about? High yield savings accounts. This is right. Like the buzzword lately. Take advantage of those interest rates. The high yield savings account that we use, or the provider, is UFB Direct. They are an Axios bank. So they have this big bank behind them, but then they have this online platform that is able to offer a high yield interest rate. And for us right now, at the time of recording, it's 4.81%.
Which is pretty amazing when you consider the average account is less than 1%.
Yeah, it's right. It's a huge jump. So it's worth your time to open up that, or it could be worth your time to open up those accounts so you're earning a little bit more on your money.
So what we don't want to do is confuse a high yield savings account with an investment product, right? Yes, you're going to earn a little bit of interest, but the idea is that while it's there and it's earning and you're just trying to maximize its potential and its value, it's just an account that you're not going to interact with often, right? This is an opportunity, a place where you're going to move a little bit of money, save a little bit of money, maybe for a rainy day or maybe for a specific thing. You gave the example of a car. So I just want to make that clarification and that distinction. And yes, we're going to be using interest as a tool to try to maximize the value. But what's another type of interest that might work against us if it's not used correctly?
Well, if you don't have any savings accounts or any savings set aside for things you want to do or things you have to do, then what often happens is it's the credit card's job to pay for it. And when that happens, the credit card has high interest. It's the most expensive form of debt that's out there. And when you're swiping that card to pay for a house repair, a vehicle repair, a vacation, then not only are you taking, or you could be taking a long time to pay for it. Maybe it's a vacation you took a couple of years ago, but also all of that interest that has built up that you also have to pay on top of it.
And that kind of becomes like this, it becomes a constant. I like to look at it that way. It's like time, right? You can't get time back. Once time is gone, it's gone. You just start from where you are and move forward. So if you're late, you're already late, right? If you're late to a meeting or an appointment, you're not going to change something and magically be on time. You're just late, right? And so I try to think of a credit card payment or a past due payment or an interest on a charge or interest on a loan kind of the same way. If I can adjust now and avoid that interest, or even better, if I can put that interest to work for me in an investment or a high yield savings account, then not only don't I get charged the interest and I don't have to come up with more money to now pay for something that I already couldn't afford, but now if it's in a savings account earning interest, even just a little bit of interest, I'm that much farther ahead. Something I'm always surprised by is the impact that selling a few things or getting a second very small, low-paying job, the impact that can have when somebody's trying to get out of debt. Now all of a sudden they're focused on not getting into debt or not taking on more debt. They're paying off their debt. They bring in a couple extra $100 a month or something, sell a few items and pay down a few of those debts. And it just becomes this momentum building activity. And they thought they were going to be stuck with debt for the rest of their life. And now they're out in 18 months, right? So if we use that kind of mentality when we're thinking about saving, and we just make the decision that we are committing to not using products like credit cards, loans, any kind of debt product that's out there, and we're not going to take that extra burden on, we're going to turn that into a benefit, right? And now we're going to grow that account.
I think that's one of the reasons why I like budgeting so much, why it's not a chore for me, because I love seeing our savings grow. I love knowing that my husband's maxing out his 401k through his employer. I love that we're putting money into a brokerage account every month. We're putting money towards college. We're putting money in towards a vacation and savings and miscellaneous savings. That's exciting to see. Yeah. That's a fun thing to see when you're working on a budget every month.
Well, and I gave an example in a previous episode about when you work for something, even if it's something simple, how much more valuable it seems, right? And so this savings, this is the definition of success for us. This is the end of the road. Even if it's, just a milestone, a stepping stone along the way, at the end of the day, this pattern, this behavior towards savings is the goal, right? We want to pay our bills while we're here. We want to live within our means. We want to provide for our families, but we have to be able to save some of that money and put it to work, put it in the right places so that it can take care of us at the end of our lives, or in the last third, right? That oftentimes is referred to as the spending phase, right? Or the consumption phase, because we kind of go through three phases, right? We start out learning what we're doing and accumulating. And then we start kind of spending some of that money, but trying to spend within a certain range of income, cash flowing. And then we consume it all at the end. And if we can leave some of that behind, if we do it right, we'll be able to leave some of that behind. And we keep talking about this generational impact. And if we're not saving now, I feel like I have to say at some point in one of these episodes that if we're not saving, we can't find a way to budget, we can't find a way to save, you might not be living the correct lifestyle. You might be living a lifestyle that's out of your means. It might just be one thing. It might be a car that you shouldn't have. It might be a home that you bought that you really couldn't afford, and you just thought you had to live in a certain area, or whatever the circumstances were. But you want to have the big picture wrapped up and have that future view in your mind of where you're going, right? And savings kind of becomes the thing, right? It's where we're headed. We're moving toward retirement. And retirement really is just another way of saying savings. It's one of them, right? But we save for all kinds of stuff.
Right. I think if you're the type of person that is living for today only, then you're doing yourself and your family a huge disservice. If you're looking at your money of, I can afford the payment, I can afford this trip, I can afford this restaurant, this new vehicle, whatever it may be, and you're not thinking about next month, next year, 10, 20, however far out you are from retirement, then frankly, you're just doing yourself and your family a disservice. If you can afford the payment, then you can afford to put money aside to save.
I was just going to say, if you can afford the payment, pay yourself.
Yep.
right? Until you've paid for it, then go buy it. And while you're paying yourself, collect that interest and keep the interest when you make the purchase. That would be a much better way to make a purchase. Now you own 100% of the asset and you kept the interest while you were saving.
Absolutely.
Right now we're growing. Now we're putting this money to work. So another tool or another trick is paying yourself for things that you do. I have a philosophy that I share with a lot of folks that says pay yourself for everything. And if you pay yourself for the little things you do around the house, then you can set that money aside. You can move that money into savings instead of paying it to a service provider for something that you can do. An example would be mowing the lawn. Pay yourself for mowing the lawn. If you make a repair around the house, pay yourself for making the repair. Move that money into a savings account of some kind. Even if it's just a fund that lives within your budget, move the money into that savings position so that it's available when you need to spend it.
I like it. I like that idea. I've heard you mention it before, but it's not something that stays top of mind with me and our lifestyle for sure. But hearing you mention it again, I do like that idea because we do, mow our own lawn and shovel our own driveway and do a lot of those things that we're not hiring out for. So if we pay ourselves, then that's more money that could be going in towards, something that we're saving short term or long term. So we mentioned interest costing you money when you're using a credit card, and credit being the most expensive form of debt. And Donald has spoken about earning interest, whether it's the high yield savings account or through your brokerage account or retirement accounts through your workplace. And that's the part that we want you to get excited about. How much can you earn? Can you exceed your wildest dreams? I know we did that recently when we had no idea that the money that we were saving for retirement was actually going to keep growing in retirement, and we would only be living off the interest. Now, I say we found this out a few years ago, so it's not we just found it out. But when we've had that discovery, it was like, man, all of these things we're doing are the right things, because now when we get to retirement, that money is going to be growing and we're living off the interest. If all things, remain the same until retirement age, which hopefully they will. Then we took it one step further, and when we had that discovery that it's just going to be growing faster than we can spend it, then we were like, well, wait a minute, let's pull back the age at which we retire. So even if it doesn't grow exponentially, well, now we can retire sooner. And now that's what our new plan is. That's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be retiring, or at least have the option to retire, when my husband, who's 6 years older than me, gets to 58 instead of 67. That's huge.
You guys moved it down a lot.
Yes,
look at that,
we did.
9 years.
And it was unintentional. We're following these principles. We're keeping true to our philosophy of saving. There is so much power in compounding interest. And I know Donald has another example for you.
Yeah. So, just thinking through this and wanting to give a range and, just give some practical information that somebody could use to make a decision and break it down into something that would be achievable or attainable. So depending on where you are in your financial life, I'm going to give you what the value would be of a certain amount of money invested for 40 years. So assuming you're starting this on day one, right? And you're putting money away for retirement, you graduate college and now you're saving. If you did that for 40 years and you returned an average of 10% on this account, which should be an average return on most mutual fund accounts, $1 would be worth $200,000. Not super exciting. $5, this is $5 a day for 40 years at 10% return, is going to be worth $1 million. $10 is going to be worth $2 million. So up to this point, we're roughly doubling. Jump up to $20 a day, which is roughly eating out, right? It's hard to eat out for between 15 to $20 now, depending on where you're going. That money every day for 40 years would get you almost $4 million, and $30 a day would return almost $6 million, returning 10% if invested consistently. And I should have done the math. I didn't. But if you compare the amount saved to the amount of growth, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of you put 10% of your money in, the rest is growth. And that to me is huge. And
the numbers you're using are not huge numbers. So if you're a low income earner, if you can
go to $5,
do $5 a day, what was that? 2 million?
It was one
1
million.
million.
Yep.
Well, there you go. $5 a day for 40
makes
years.
You a millionaire.
You makes you a millionaire.
Which is the average price of a Starbucks coffee. So a coffee a day makes you a millionaire.
It is within reach.
It is. Absolutely.
That's what we want you to walk away with. You do not have to be a high income earner to become a millionaire. You do not have to have an inheritance to become a millionaire. Just
a little bit of intention and discipline will get you there. So how do we put this into practice? This is long-term thinking, right? This is getting that, $1, $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million that we need to retire with. We got to do a lot of other things along the way in order to make sure that we both protect our retirement, but also pay for the things that we're going to need and the things that we hopefully are going to be able to buy that we want along the way, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a term that is used for those kinds of funds. What are those called?
They're called the sinking funds.
Sinking funds.
If you just think of it, you're sinking money into a fund, a savings account, to be used when you need it. So we're talking about setting up savings accounts.
And I kind of described that, right? I said, if you can convince yourself to make a payment for something, you're going to pay for whatever that is, whether it's watercraft or a car or a house or whatever, you're going to make a payment. So you're going to pay your principal balance, but you're also going to pay interest. So if you can accept the payment, why not pay yourself into a sinking fund and keep the interest, right? And if you can put that money into a high yield savings account, then you can pay yourself the interest. And then when you have enough, you can purchase the item, right?
Exactly.
So that would be a way to use one of these sinking funds.
Exactly. Let's talk about what some of those sinking funds could be.
Yeah.
Now, for every household, we recommend everybody has an emergency fund.
Absolutely.
It depends where you are in your financial journey. If you are still trying to get out of debt, then we recommend you have a starter emergency fund. If you're out of debt, then we recommend you have a fully funded 3 to 6 month emergency fund, depending on your household's needs, depends on if it's 3, 6, or somewhere in between. Every home, we believe, needs an emergency fund. That's a need off the top. If you own a vehicle, having a car maintenance fund just makes sense because not only is there general wear and tear, tires, brakes, windshield wipers, there's registration and oil changes, but then there's things that happen to your vehicle that you don't plan on that you have to have repaired. Same with your home maintenance. Have an account for home maintenance. Now, we're not talking about this isn't an account for saving for a down payment for a home. This is just you're already a homeowner. You have a roof that is going to need to be replaced, an air conditioner unit that has to be repaired or replaced, hot water tank. You want to remodel a bathroom, anything that is within the confines of inside your home, your landscaping. Have an account for that so you can plan and save up for it. What are some of the other ones we like to save for, Donald?
You hit a bunch of them, but I think education's on the list, right? So that's a longer range target. And I would even say, talking to some people out there that don't have a home yet, you may be sinking money into a down payment on a home, right? Or maybe you have to pay a deposit early for an upcoming vacation. So we have vacation funds. Those are very common, right? And we see those a lot. Most of us have a vacation fund. And then you've just got some of the other sort of miscellaneous things. So you've got holiday shopping that comes up. We have an account or a fund that covers just gifts in general, because I shared with Christine earlier that, there's not a month that goes by that we don't buy a gift for somebody, because my son has so many friends. And so he's always going to a birthday. He's going to a birthday tomorrow or maybe this afternoon. So he, there's always going to be a cost associated with those types of activities. And so these are some examples of some funds that you could establish so that you always have those extra needs covered. Now, you're still going to budget them. There's still going to be a monthly activity. You're going to sink money into these different buckets, but it prevents the expenses from hitting your monthly budget needs.
Absolutely. And you can even take it another step further. If you pay any kind of expense on an annual basis, maybe it's oil, like fuel oil for your home in the winter. Maybe it's your insurance costs you haven't broken out, annually or biannually. You can put money into these sinking funds each month. So when it's time to buy the fuel oil, write the check to the insurance agency, Maybe there are annual subscriptions that you have. Donald mentioned in an episode, I think it was last season or earlier this season, that when he signs up for anything, any kind of subscription, reoccurring payment, he does it on an annual basis so he can reevaluate. Does he want to pay for that again for a whole nother year? Well, if you save for these all throughout the year, then when those bills come due, it's very easy to make that payment.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, essentially, it's a bigger decision if I do it as an annual commitment. And so, do I want to spend $7 a month, or do I want to spend $200 for this service, right? Mm-hmm. Or whatever it is, $12 a month, $144 a year. So it pushes the number up that I'm making a decision on just enough for me to pause and make an informed decision, and really qualify whether or not we want to spend the money. And then, like you said, you still budget the activity monthly, and you refund yourself. So we do have those. We have subscription accounts as a fund. And then you mentioned the vehicle maintenance. That was one where I made an adjustment just because I was having a hard time with my budgeting activity, following the vehicle maintenance, following the tire purchases, the oil changes, and then having this other account for vehicle insurance and registration and stuff like that. So I lumped all of that together. We just have this automotive sinking fund that I figured out about how much per year we spend, and then divided that by 12, and that's how much per month we put into that account. And then whenever a vehicle need arises, that expense just drops into that sinking fund, and then we recover from it just because of the monthly activity. And that way I never have to worry about when the insurance is due or when the tires are going to be replaced. I just always operate out of that fund, and that fund protects me. It makes sure that I have money there and available to spend.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So Donald and I, obviously, as you hear us talking, we each have all of these different funds, but we go about it two very different ways. I physically, at our credit union, we have different accounts for these different categories. For me, it's very visual. There are buckets of money. I can open up my app, or I can go online and look at our account, and I can see how much is in our vacation, how much is in our home, how much is in our vehicle. And I know that the money, because they are labeled with exactly what that money is for, I know if I'm looking at my vacation account and I see $5,000, but the vacation that we want to take is a $10,000 vacation. Well, I have a couple choices ahead of me, and I can tell you,
equity loan on the house.
I can tell you, it does not. None of the choices or none of the options involve debt. What the options are, maybe it's delaying the vacation because I really want to take that $10,000 vacation. So
save a little longer.
Let me wait X number of months so I can save the other half of the money and take it then. Maybe it's that $10,000 vacation is still really important to me, but you know what? Our family, we need a getaway this summer. So we're going to take a less expensive getaway that's not $5,000 of what we have in the account. Maybe it's $1,000 or $1,500, and we're going to get away on a much more reasonable trip. But I still have money in that account that I can keep saving for that big vacation that I want to take with my family. By doing it this way for myself and my family, it's very clear. If you think of envelopes of cash, if you're someone who uses that method, this is the same thing. They're envelopes or buckets, accounts, sinking funds of money for very specific things. Donald, how do you manage it in your house?
So we do. We do this the same but different. And so we lean more into the technology and the automation, and a little bit more, I'll say, the accountant mentality in me. It comes out because what we do is we just have one checking account. So we have three total accounts. We have a emergency fund, and that's a money market account in the same category as a high yield savings account. And then we have a traditional savings account, and that's our giving account. The spend activity is much more irregular. It's regular, but it's much less frequent. So we spend out of our giving account about once a month to our local church. And then if we have another organization that we want to support, that's where that money would come from, but only if that money is there. And so that helps us manage that. And then, as Christine was saying, those are automated amounts. So once our emergency fund was funded, we stopped putting money into there. But now monthly, we continue to put money into our, or every pay cycle, we put money anytime income is received into our giving account. A percentage of it goes there, and that's an automatic thing. And then we have our primary checking account, and those are the only three accounts that we have. The checking account is as you can imagine, is a balance that fluctuates a lot because a lot of our savings activity lands there because these are short-term savings, right? I talked about like the maintenance on the car, the insurance payments, I talked about subscriptions that get renewed. And so money ends up accruing into the checking account and being held there for a certain amount of time, usually less than a year, because those payments are gonna come out at some frequency. And so the way that we capture those is in our budget. Our budget is it's electronic. It's an application. We use every dollar, and we just set up the funds in every dollar. And one of the things that I've found is that for us, what we learned is that living out of the budget and not the bank account, that became an automatic way to protect us from overspending. And so as we operated from a budgeted perspective, and we were never really looking at our bank account, a balance, we were never tempted to spend the money that was in that bank account balance. And I started to find this was true with others as well. Not everybody, but for anybody that doesn't want to have multiple bank accounts, this is a way to do it with just a single bank account and just manage the funds in an accounting software or in a budgeting app. You could use spreadsheets if you wanted to, or if you wanted something more integrated and more like a database. QuickBooks is a tool that can be used for small business, but it could also be applied into a home personal finance situation. So we use, like I said, the Every Dollar app. There's others, and by connecting the activity, we're able to manage our accounts the same way. So in both situations, you're going to have accounts that are designated accounts for particular activities, right, Christine? You've got separate accounts that are only to be used for those activities. Yours are bank accounts, and mine are just funds on a spreadsheet. So this kind of speaks to something we've said before. You got to figure out what works for you in your situation and what connects with you the most. Are you somebody that just needs to have those separate accounts, or are you somebody that wants to have all their money in one place but can manage accounts in a more manual way, running it through a spreadsheet or an accounting software?
Right. What's going to be most successful for you? Yeah. And if you looking at your checking account state or, balance, and you see hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, and that gives you a little excitement and you feel like, oh, well, I'll catch up next month. Oh, that expense is 11 months out. I'll just dip in a little bit. Well, then I would suggest put that barrier between you and your money and open up the additional savings accounts. But if you're somebody who can manage it on paper or through an app like Every Dollar and just move the money around accounting wise, then do it that way. Absolutely. More barriers that you can put in place are naming these accounts. Because if you're now robbing from vacation because you want to do something today, well, I think that makes it a little bit more challenging, because if you know that vacation that I've been saving up for, now it's going to put me further out from taking it, you may pause in robbing from that account. Something else that you can do that we talked about earlier was the automation piece of splitting up that direct deposit or setting up the automatic bank transfers within your financial institution. So the money is just going from your income account, your checking account, into the different savings accounts that you have. You can also have these savings accounts with no form of access to it, meaning no debit card, or it's in a different physical location. And because there is no debit card or checks associated with it, you actually have to drive there to take money out. Now, that may seem extreme to you, but for someone, that may be just what they need to put that barrier in place until they can have these healthy habits where now it's their lifestyle versus they're trying to achieve it. And then lastly, if you are using an app or your online banking website, hide those accounts from your dashboard so you don't even see them there. So these are just a few ways that you can put some barriers between you and your savings.
Yeah, and I think, you said something that I think is really important. It's the behavior, right? So once we have the habit and the behavior established, then you can try on some of these other solutions. But if you're a spender, you're a spender, and if there's money there, I've had clients that say, if there's money in my account, I'm going to spend it. Because that was, for me, that's one of the reasons that I established that barrier of, okay, we're going to live out of a budget. You're no longer allowed to look at your bank account, right? Because if you're going to look at it and you're going to see it and you're going to spend it, then you can't know it's there. And so we have to develop some discipline. And so I like what you're saying. The whole idea here is that we're changing our habits, right? We're trying to take on better habits. And if we take on enough good habits, we can replace the bad habits. And so once we've done that, or at least we're moving in that direction, that frees you up to sort of try some of these other strategies too and see what's going to stick, what you're going to be able to do long term, and how you can simplify your life. One of those solutions, or a combination of them, is going to give you what you need in order to be successful long term.
Yep, exactly. I think of it as like, having your cake and eating it too, because if you have that cake on the counter and you devour it all in 1 or 2 sittings, well, that's not healthy. That's not a good habit, right? But if you have the cake on the counter, you have a slice of it every day until it's gone. Well, that's enjoying it. That's doing something that is healthy.
So where does some of the money come from when we start trying to save? So, you start putting these savings accounts out there. Where are you going to get the money in the beginning to start funding these accounts, right? It's got to come from somewhere.
That's your budget, baby. That's your freedom plan. We gotta max out that budget so we can put as much as we can into our savings goals, if that's what we're focusing on. If we're not.
And there it is right there. You just said focus. So I think that's the key, right? If we're focused on savings, if that becomes the priority, then everything else becomes a want and becomes a lower priority. So if you want to increase savings, you need to do one of two or both of these things. You can increase income or you can decrease expenses. Or if you do both, you can really launch yourself forward. And I'm always surprised, I'm always amazed at how much progress people can make when they take on an extra job, or they ask for a raise, or they look for a new job that'll get them a little bit more income, or they sell some stuff just to free up some cash, and then they put that cash immediately to work, whether it's paying off debt or going into a savings account, and they get that established early, because that's really the goal. I shared those numbers earlier and said, if you have that account and you feed it for 40 years, then you'll achieve these numbers. But that's 40 years of consistent effort, right? And so if I'm already 40 years old, I probably don't have 40 more years of consistent income generating investing in front of me, right? So it means you need to get started early. And so the earlier you can start, the better off you'll be. And even if it's just, loose change you find in the car or the couch cushions, then find it, use it the right way. And if you can, save it, but at least get yourself out of debt and in a position to save faster so that you can begin this process.
Yep. If you haven't figured it out yet, debt really holds you back. If you're living the mentality of, I can afford the payment, then you're living for today. You're not living for your future. And that could be a tough pill to swallow, and maybe having to not get what you want whenever you want it. But in the long term, the wealth that you're going to build is not even going to hold a light compared to what you're spending today.
To me, and I may be skipping way forward, but to me, it feels like you just paraphrased our quote for the day.
Yeah,
so I wonder if this is a good place to share it.
It's an excellent time. You want to go ahead and read it?
Sure. Yeah, I'll share it. So the quote is a Warren Buffett quote, and it's, "Do not save what is left after spending. Instead, spend what is left after saving." So we're talking about a mentality shift, right? That's it. That's what we just finished talking about, was these better behaviors, making saving a priority. If we're saving first, then we can only spend what's left, right? So put a little bit of money away, and I would even say stretch a little bit. So a change I made recently to our mortgage payment was I increased it to hit another barrier, another threshold, to try to get the house paid off even a little bit faster. And we were able to fit it within our budget, our means for this year. And by reducing some spend and increasing some income, we're going to be able to pay that mortgage off just a little bit sooner. It was a painful thing because I had to now increase my payment just a little bit more, but I would suggest doing the same thing with savings. And the nice thing about that is that money's not going anywhere. It's still your money. So save more of it earlier, more often, faster, and as much as possible, as much as you can bear and withstand, and then live on the rest and see what you can get by with. And I think you'll be surprised how little you can actually get by with at the end of the day.
It's really amazing. If, again, I always go back to this, if somebody told me in the spring of 2017, you're going to be able to stretch your income, you're going to be able to pay off your debt, save a fully funded emergency fund, eventually pay off your mortgage, eventually retire earlier than you ever thought possible, I would have been like, what are you talking about? The budgeting is key. Creating goals are key. And then stopping the bleeding is key. Stop using debt to live your life today.
Well, those aren't all on the action list for today, but they're all action steps that I want you to take. Listen to everything Christine just said, but here's a few more, right? So get your emergency fund funded. Even if it's just your starter emergency fund, just get it funded, put some money away, set it aside, begin this process. Then build a fund for car maintenance, home maintenance, vacations, annual expenses like renewals of subscriptions or anything else that happens annually or semi-annually. Insurance payments are a good example. A lot of people pay them. We pay them every 6 months. Holiday expenses, pet expenses, and then have a miscellaneous account, a reasonable miscellaneous account, so that you have some of these kind of inherent mistakes covered, because it's never going to be perfect. And we talk about that all the time. But the point is, we want to be prepared. We want to go in eyes wide open. We want to be informed. We want to be protected. And I told you that we put money every time we receive income, some of that money goes into our maintenance budget. And that just makes sure that when I do need tires for the car, I can just go buy tires. I don't have to plan ahead or delay or risk driving on the tires too long. I have money in the account.
Or put it on a credit card.
And I don't have to put it on a credit card. Yeah. And, even if some people make the argument, not to belabor this, but some people will make the argument, well, I pay my credit card off every month, so it's the same as a debit card. The behavior maybe, but the risk associated with it is not. And statistically speaking, you will spend more on a credit card than you will on a debit card, and even more on a debit card than you will in hard cash. Mm-hmm. So if you really want to hold yourself accountable and you want to start this savings gig, convert yourself 100% to cash, or at least as much as possible, because that in itself will reduce your spending. And it will give you a much better awareness of how much money you're able to save. And
I can testify to that because, again, going back 6 years, once we switched from using a credit card that I paid off every month, we stretch our money so much further. And the fact that we now use cash for our not fixed expenses, it is so eye-opening, but it's also so freeing, because we have the money, we pay for it. If we don't have the money, then we're not doing it this month. Or we're doing it, but we're doing it scaled back instead of, we'll figure out how we're going to pay for it when the bill comes in. No, there's no bill.
It gives you a little bit of reinforcement when it comes time to say no to something. If a friend or a family member wants you to do something and it's just not in the budget, it's just not in the budget. And so you don't have that same sense of guilt when before you knew that you were in debt. And you felt like, well, I did these other things and I didn't say no to those, so I guess I should say yes to this. And then you go further into debt. Right. You don't feel that way anymore. You just know spiraling. That these are the things I will do and these are the things I won't do. So your boundaries become very, very clear. I think there's a few sort of less obvious areas that we could fund as well, which would be taxes. If you are going to owe any taxes, or if you're self-employed and you're going to owe taxes, you want to set that money aside. This is a good opportunity for a sinking fund, maybe an upcoming wedding or a graduation or other life event. And then we talked about the down payment on the house already. So down payments on things that you're going to be purchasing, or money that might be due before the initial purchase as a, money down to hold an item that maybe has to be manufactured or something like that. These are all, good ways to use sinking funds so that you can have success, financial success.
Saving is success, to go back to the title of this episode. And lastly, we're going to round out the episode and leave you with our book recommendation, which is The Year of Less by Kate Flanders. Anyone who is thinking about that minimalist lifestyle and can I really get away with less, this is a great book for that.
Yeah, this will be a great way. I've not read it, but I can imagine from the title, The Year of Less, very minimalist, like you said. And we just finished saying, you'll be surprised how little you can live on if you challenge yourself. So try. See how less you can get, and then save the rest.
We have no debt today. We have a paid-for home because of this mentality of you can live on less. And you don't know it when you're living on this hamster wheel of work, pay, spend, however you want to, look at it, work, pay, work, spend. When you get off of that hamster wheel and become intentional, I wish I had $1 for every time I use that word, because we use it so much, because it's so critical to this concept of creating healthy habits with your money.
Yep. So, intentional, priority, right? Those are going to be just such a constant theme. And then, of course, budgeting, right? Yeah. We can't budget without intention and without prioritizing.
Yep. And then stop taking on more debt, because you're only putting yourself further behind. So we hope this episode has inspired you to at the very least, create that emergency fund savings account. And then, challenge yourself and push yourself further and create some of these other accounts.
And start watching that value, that net worth go up and up and up over the years. And you will be glad. You will not regret starting a savings account of any kind. You won't regret it.
All right.
So that's going to be it for this episode. I look forward to next time. Until then, bye.
Bye-bye. As do I. Take care.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Off Limits.
Beyond the podcast, we are money coaches who want to help you.
So if you are looking for help managing your money, use the links in the description below to contact either of us and learn how coaching can help you thrive.
Lastly, please help us to spread the word by subscribing, leaving a comment, and sharing our podcast with your friends and family.